I'm going to share about a sailing adventure that I took that could have turned bad and potentially life-threatening. While sailing at night with a disabled propeller in a constrained space, a constrained channel, with a barge bearing down on me, that was a bad time to realize that the VHF radio was not working properly, and I had to come up quick with a alternative means to communicate with that barge. We're going to review the international regulations for avoiding collisions as they pertain to visual and sound signals, and we'll also go over some important safety equipment you should have on your boat that I realized that I should have had on my boat. In the summer of 2022, I embarked upon an adventure heading north from Chicago up to Lake Huron to sail and explore amidst the North Channel. On the second evening of that adventure, I lost propulsion while motoring. The engine worked, but my prop shaft coupling failed. And so the transmission was spinning, but it was not connected to the prop shaft, so the prop shaft was not spinning. I had no propulsion. In the wake of this issue, my crew and I decided to head north because we felt that there were more maintenance facilities and boat yards available in the Traverse Bay area. However, to get to Traverse Bay, we would need to traverse through the Manitou Passage, which is a 6-mile wide channel between two islands in the mainland. We'd have to navigate through that channel without propulsion. We'd have to rely on sails only, and we'd be subject to the weather. We had enough wind to propel us up to the channel, but the wind quickly died down as we entered the channel, which meant we were extremely restricted in maneuverability. I had my running lights on, the side lights of appropriate colors, red and green, and the stern light. I could see on AIS that a commercial vessel was approaching, and as that vessel approached, I could see its light pattern, and it was in accordance with the ColRegs. It had the same light pattern as mine, except one additional masthead light, or an additional steaming light. They were oriented vertically, one on top of the other. Watching the lights approach from the distance, it seemed like they were heading straight toward us. So I started trying to hail the vessel on the distress frequency, channel 16. The emergency services monitor that station, and all vessels underway, especially if trying to communicate with other vessels on VHF, should be monitoring VHF channel 16. So I took advantage of that, and I was trying to hail this other vessel on that channel. I tried unsuccessfully to hail that vessel for about 20 minutes, and those lights kept approaching closer and closer in the dark. And it's hard to judge the distance in the dark, so the fact that that boat was continuing to bear down on me was unnerving. At this stage, I could point out that I didn't do something that I should have done, and if I were in that situation again, I would definitely do this. And that is to hang 3 lights vertically along the mast. The lights would be a red, a white, and a red, in that pattern arranged vertically so that they could be seen in 360 degrees all around. According to the international ColRegs, that is the appropriate light pattern for a vessel that has restricted maneuverability. And in this situation, that was me. Without wind, I was severely limited in my ability to maneuver, and that vessel had to maneuver around me. Without VHF radio, it was extremely difficult to communicate that to the other vessel at this point. Now, I always carry chem lights, both red and white chem lights, to give myself the ability to hang a light pattern up vertically on my mast. According to the international ColRegs, during the day, the appropriate pattern is a ball, a diamond, and a ball arranged vertically. So if it's not at night, it's during the day, and you want to comply with the international collision avoidance regulations, you would hang a black ball over a diamond over another black ball. And the diamond is usually formed by 2 black cones with the flat edges butted up against each other. These daytime shapes should be visible 360 degrees. The barge continued to bear down on my vessel, and it was increasingly clear that something had to be done. I recalled from a previous seminar at a boat show a story that one sailor told, where the way they communicated or made it apparent to another vessel that was bearing down on them that they were present was to take a high beam flashlight and shine it on their sails. And I don't know, I'm glad I remembered it. I remembered the story, and I'm glad I had the wherewithal to try to educate myself for different situations like that, because that worked. I went up to the deck and I took my high beam flashlight and I shined it on the sails, and I'll be darned if within 30 seconds that barge activity started occurring on its decks. I could hear it starting to groan and change direction to avoid bearing down on me any further. So I was myself and the crew was incredibly relieved when we saw that the barge started turning away from our vessel. I'm not saying that they ultimately would have ran us over, but that could have happened. And this was not a great situation to be in with the VHF radio not working properly. I could not hail them. I could not get them on the VHF. An additional measure that was available to me and I didn't even think about, was an air horn. I had an air horn on board and I could have used that. According to the International Regulations of Collision Avoidance, the appropriate signal for a vessel that has restricted maneuverability is 1 prolonged blast and then 2 short blasts. A prolonged blast is defined as 4 to 6 seconds. A short blast would be defined as 1 second. This noise pattern, this sound pattern, should be followed every 2 minutes or so. There's a question in my mind how effective that would have been if the crew of the barge, of the trawler pushing the barge, was near an engine and in an enclosed area. My air horn, they may not have heard. It's questionable whether or not it would have been effective, but it was another thing that I could have been trying in addition to trying to hail on the VHF. Another means at my disposal that I failed to use was a secondary radio. I had a secondary backup handheld radio, and I did not turn that on, and I did not try to use that to communicate with the barge. In hindsight, that is something I should have tried. It was only after the episode of encountering this barge that I seriously questioned the effectiveness of my radio, and I started investigating and looking at what could have gone wrong. And sure enough, I figured out that my VHF antenna was not connected properly. Not only in that situation did I not use my backup VHF radio, which very likely would have had better effectiveness, but also I did not have on board a backup VHF antenna. A backup VHF antenna is prescribed to be carried on many race boats that are conducting long distance races. And it's something that I didn't have on board, but I do now. So if you have any interest in ensuring that you have all the backup or emergency equipment you should have, check out the regulations and the guidance for vessels that are participating in distance races, because generally those prescriptions are going to be good guidance for your boat to be safe. After sailing another 12 hours after that encounter, we finally arrived at the northernmost point of Traverse Bay and called in for the tow. The wind died down at that point, and the towboat was the only way we were going to have propulsion. So they came out and they pulled us into Northport Marina, where eventually I was hauled out the following day and learned further about the problem with my propulsion, but that is a story for another time. If you're interested in that story, check out the link that I'm providing now and also at the end of the video. So imagine being in that situation with an oncoming barge, and all of a sudden that barge blasts 2 short blasts on their horn. What does that mean? I'll tell you, in that situation, had that happened, and it didn't, but had that happened, I would have been frantically looking for my regulations, the booklet that all vessels are required to maintain. That book was on my vessel, and I would have had to run down, try to pull it out of my nav desk, which is where it was, bring it back up in the dark, frantically page through about the 100 pages that existed, and try to find what the heck 2 short blasts meant in a signal from one vessel to another vessel. Without VHF radio and in this situation, in the dark, in a constrained space, not understanding those signals is a liability. And that's something that we should all work to prevent. The ColRegs is not just for people that are studying to be a captain or to obtain their captain's license. It's more than that. As sailors, we're all going to find ourselves in a situation where we're leveraging much more lower forms of technology. Technology is going to fail, and we're going to have to adapt and figure out ways to use air horns, light signals, flag signals, the basics. And that information is available in the international regulations for collision avoidance. I want to thank my subscribers. I really appreciate your support. If you stay till the end of the video, I'd really appreciate it if you press that like button. It really helps the channel grow. If you're interested in a story about how I lost my propulsion and what I had to do to overcome that challenge, check out this video here. This is Sailor Eric. Thanks for watching.